We continue with the bulletin here tonight. Eskom announcing that it'll implement stage 6 load shedding once again during peak evening hours on Monday night. Now, the company also warning the public that it may take a couple of weeks for the power grid to stabilize. It follows the end of industrial action by Eskom employees. We're currently in stage 4 load shedding. That's expected to move to stage 2, as you'll see on your screen, before it's stepped up again to stage 6 tomorrow. Well, young people saying that they want to have a say in terms of the solutions to the country's power crisis. We're joined by the South African Youth Economic Council Executive Chair, Bonga Makhanya. Bonga, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. Firstly, why do you actually feel that young people are not being included in the conversation for solutions?
Good evening, Kathy, and good evening to all your listeners and all those tuned in, and to all South Africans and young South Africans. As a council, we firmly believe that part and parcel of our problems in South Africa is that there's a lack of representation in strategic decision-making structures in this country when it relates to young people. So definitely, to answer your question in a very short way, is that young people are in the periphery when it comes to all the strategic decision-making bodies. And we as a council believe that once you start to include young, skilled, capable people, you start to seeing more innovative ideas, a dynamic group of people that can have strategies to turn around entities such as Eskom, SAA, and all sorts of the crisis that South Africa finds itself in. South Africa finds itself in a state of hopelessness as a result of Eskom, as a result of structural issues in our economy, and we believe that part of those solutions is deploying young, capable, skilled young people who have the necessary skills, who has the necessary background to drive real scientific ideas, as well as to bring that dynamic type of thinking into these organizations.
So let's keep it with Eskom and give me a practical idea of how you believe that young people being involved or engaged further could help with the current load shedding crisis.
Well, firstly, if we had young people in the decision-making structure of how we came to appointing under director, you would have seen that
When you talk about decision-making structure, which structure more specifically?
Well, I mean, look, so Eskom finds itself operating in a very politicized environment. If you were to look at the ruling party, the African National Congress, you will find that within the African National Congress and how it deploys its members either into SOEs or into strategic positions of political office, you'll find that there are no young people. So that in itself is a problem, because we need to have young people in strategic positions of political power so that they can also influence the strategic direction that the country will take in SOEs, in departments, as well as in all forms of and levels of the state. So that's one area, the political office. But also, you need young people occupying strategic positions of power within business and within corporates, because corporates play a big role in this country when it comes to some of the direction that the country takes as in terms of the economy, how its investment decisions that it takes. You'll find that when you look at the JSE listed companies, year on year, most of these companies record profits that end up with capital flight crisis, end up going overseas and not being reinvested into the South African economy. It gets declared as dividends to shareholders, and it doesn't go back into creating new firms, into new branches or so on and so forth. So if you had young people in strategic positions of power within the corporate space who are young, they're skilled, they have great ideas in terms of having researched other economies, they would be able to drive the type of meaningful reform that we see. Because South Africa since 1994 has not changed in terms of the structural ownership patterns, in terms of the managerial patterns, and we need young people to occupy those positions so that they come with fresh ideas, come with new solutions, because the same people who are running, whether it's corporate or they've been running the state, are the same people who've been around post-1994. So what has changed if the same people are still in the same positions of power?
It's interesting that you almost contextualize the problem as stemming out of the ANC and how it makes its decision around deployments and who it chooses ultimately to put in whatever strategic positions they may want to. when we look at young people, especially professional young people, most of them want to be apolitical and, in fact, would shy away from the public space because of the corruption that is endemic there and would rather perhaps work in private organizations. So when it comes ultimately to that issue of making sure that the public service is something that is appealing to young people, where do you think that they could begin? Because Eskom is still a state-owned entity.
Yes, indeed. Young people must not be apolitical. Young people must occupy political parties, whether it's the EFF, the DA, or the ANC, because there's no meaningful change that will come in South Africa outside the role of the state. There's no meaningful, you're not going to drive down the unemployment rates or the youth unemployment rates or the inequality without driving meaningful economic policy, fiscal policy through the state machinery. So young people, wherever they find themselves, whether left-leaning or right-leaning, they must join political parties. They must either contest as independents now that we're seeing with the IEC reforms, because there's no meaningful change that will come outside South Africa, outside of the state.
Would you say that as the SA Youth Economic Council, you've set up or you have a plan that you can share with Eskom that has been drawn up by young people to tackle the country's power crisis?
Yes. For one, the South African Youth Economic Council believes that we have no faith whatsoever in the capacity or the competency of the CEO, Andre de Ruyter, and his board. And we believe that Andre de Ruyter should immediately resign to bring back the Minister of SOEs should appoint a young, competent board that is skilled, that has a background in engineering, that knows what it's doing.
Who are these individuals that you would want to take over?
Andre de Ruyter, Kathy, has shown huge levels of incompetency when you see how much and how frequently we've been load shedding as Eskom compared to his predecessors. I think we've load shed about 4,000 gigawatts an hour, and 2008 until 2020 it was only 2,000. When it takes over between then and now, we've shed about 4,000 gigawatts. So out of the 6,000 gigawatts an hour that we've shed, 4,000 has been under the Ruyter. So
although in fairness to understanding the problems at Eskom, there's a lot more context to it than just the capability or the capacity of the CEO. But I'm asking you, who are these young people? So Andre de Ruyter is fired tomorrow. Who must replace him?
Well, I think obviously with the issue of, because I'll raise a few names and then you might come to me and say, well, these people don't have experience or so on and so forth. There are credible SOEs being run that are sustainable, that are profitable, that are doing well. One I can cite off the top of my head is the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, which is led by a capable Dr. Pindile Masangana, who has a background in chemical engineering. So all those type of people are not being deployed into the strategic. Instead, you choose to go send some lawyer who has collapsed Nampak, took it from a 29 billion rand company and collapsed it to a 5 billion rand market value, dipping 84%, and you expect that person to come and turn around Eskom. Yet, there are young and capable black professionals within the public service, within strategic SOEs, that are not being given a chance with Eskom. Instead, it's been highly politicized, and it's been used to deploy people that have shown absolutely no competency in terms of turning around any SOE, let alone Eskom.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Bonga Makhanya is with the South African Youth Economic Council.